Hey, South Carolina at Clemson. Game's got some juice to it now. Noon Eastern, ABC. This is the first ranked matchup in the Palmetto Bowl since 2013. Since 2013. And South Carolina, quite frankly, being 2.5-point dogs on the road, a little bit curious to me. I don't know if I trust that line. We'll talk more about that in a second. For South Carolina, man, I think there's college football playoff implications here. And you say they're a 3-loss team, they lost the head-to-heads. I get all of that. But if the committee's just going to use common sense and say we got to take the best 12 teams right now, South Carolina to me is in that discussion. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. If they get a win over Clemson, depending on how you divvy up your ranked wins, this would be their third ranked win. Resume boost. Be a nice last data point for the committee before they move into Selection Sunday after conference title weekend. So for South Carolina now, this is a chance, I think, also to kind of turn the tide a little bit in this rivalry. South Carolina has won 1 of the last 9 of these. Obviously, that most recent one coming in 2022 with the Spencer Rattler game. This is a chance to rewrite the future of this rivalry, I believe, for Shane Beamer and company. Because you see Clemson, there's all this talk around what they haven't done the last couple of years, and they don't use the portal, and this about Dabo, and that about Dabo. Like, if South Carolina walks in there and blows the doors off of them, the optics are, oh, there's a new team in the state of South Carolina. I don't know about Clemson, but South Carolina is one of those teams going to be a wagon for a long time now. Clemson, I think it's a chance for what I just spoke to, kind of revitalizing optics. Because the Louisville game, I think, lives as a snapshot in so many of our minds when we think about the 2024 season for Clemson. If you go beat a team like South Carolina the last week of the season, there's a chance now, I think, for everyone to put a little bit more respect on Clemson's name heading into the offseason. Now, speaking of the offseason, probably a little bit too premature to do that. Clemson, regardless of if they win or lose this game, they have a chance to show up in the ACC title game if Syracuse beats Miami. I'll say this. Let's say that Syracuse does beat Miami. You don't want to limp into that ACC title game against Charlotte. Like, you want to have some momentum, have some juice here, and this is a chance to capture that against what, again, I believe to be one of the best college football teams in America right now. I mentioned the line confuses me. Clemson minus 2.5. I guess it's at home, so that'd be the reason why you would lean that way if you think it's even. Y'all, I don't really think it's that even. I think that this South Carolina pass rush can absolutely break the game. Now, do they get that done? That's why we're doing the prediction video. Listen, the pressure here, I think, is on Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik. Because Garrett Riley, what he was brought to do at Clemson was manufacture some more explosives, be able to do what he did at TCU over at Clemson. And they've got some more personnel in the perimeter to do that right now. But I think what we said about A&M and Texas and the responsibility for Quinn Ewers is the same responsibility you have for Cade Klubnik here. Need us to be able to see the whole picture before we get rolling. Because, listen, if you usually have 2.5 Mississippis to drop back and pass, you got like 1.5 in this game. Like Dylan Stewart, Kennard, they're hunting in this game. So if I'm Garrett Riley, need, again, some window dressing, some play action, some things to kind of set that South Carolina defense back a half step or at least cause them to hesitate. And then alongside that, I want to move the pocket. I want us to move the launch point for Cade Klubnik because I do not want him sitting back there and have that pocket collapse on him. Bad vibes. Very, very bad vibes. I think there's also a lot of pressure here for the South Carolina defensive backs to hold up their end of the bargain. Because as good as they have played this year statistically, I'm not 100% sure that those numbers aren't maybe a touch inflated by how well that front seven has played for them. It's a lot easier to play corner when you don't have to cover for 5 seconds, all right? So that's pretty straightforward. Can Cade Klubnik create extended plays and allow his guys to get open downfield? In addition to that, what we spoke to with Garrett Riley, can you create enough eye candy, window dressing, cliche words to use, but we'll use them here, to open things up downfield for this Clemson offense? College football sickos, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Game predictions like this one, analysis, signing day around the corner, make sure you're locked in. This show brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Free pick for Thanksgiving weekend. You got Tyreek Hill, 99% off. He gets a half-yard receiving. That cashes. Pair it with another square. You're off to the races. So use code HARDCOUNT. Playing $5 in lineups gets you $50 in promo funds. Again, over at prizepicks.com using code HARDCOUNT. Now back to the prediction. Now, for Cade Klubnik, man, this is your moment. Like this is your chance to have your big moment as the quarterback at Clemson because the ACC title game is phenomenal, and I think that was kind of the introduction for us for Cade Klubnik. But since then, man, it's been a lot of good, a lot of solid against good competition. But like there's not that moment that you really plant your flag on as the quarterback at Clemson and say, okay, I'm the guy. This is what you brought me here to do. This is why I was one of the top quarterbacks in America when I came out of high school out there in Austin, Texas. Like this is what I'm here for. If you go beat South Carolina, and again, you're favored in this game, South Carolina's in college football playoff contention, I think you have a chance to, rewrite your own legacy a little bit here. Not that he's a bad legacy, but I think we view him in a different light if you're able to springboard yourself against South Carolina. Let's say Syracuse handles business. You're in the college football playoff beating SMU. Like, things could snowball pretty quick, fast, in a hurry when it comes to optics around Cade Klubnik in his time at Clemson in a positive manner. Now, in the same way, I think LaNorris Sellers is a chance for him to kind of maybe reset the temperature around how people view South Carolina football, to what we spoke to at the Open here. He's already arrived. Like, I don't really like us talking about him in the context of, hey, he's a future star of the sport, man. LaNorris Sellers, I'm telling you what, watch what he does in the next couple of years. Like, we're watching what he's doing right now. But if they go out and beat Clemson and boost their college football playoff resume with a third-ranked win, I think you look at him and you say, okay, this guy and the way that this team is trending with him being the quarterback here the next couple of years, one, you go all in on the portal, like Pete Nakos wrote about already at on3.com. Go check that out. But two, like, you have a very, very clear direction for where South Carolina football is headed with him as your guy. A guy that was recruited by Shane Beamer, a guy who's from the state, a guy that, quite frankly, gives you a chance in every single game you play in because he's your quarterback. Like, this is the exclamation mark to his arrival, if you will, at South Carolina. And then you move into that next season at South Carolina with him as your quarterback, and, like, we get to SEC Media Days in Atlanta, and everyone's kind of buzzing about, well, hey, who's your dark horse team? Hey, who's your guy who could be a dark horse Heisman pick? Hey, who's the most dangerous team that's not getting enough love right now as a potential conference champion? I think South Carolina would step into that void if they're able to win this game convincingly in the manner that they would like to win. Now, speaking to the LaNorris Sellers a little bit more, what's impressed me so much about him, as much as the physical tools, and he's like Optimus Prime out there against A&M, just throwing dudes off him left and right, escaping sacks, willing his team to a win, the way he's progressed, I think deserves a ton of attention. And I'm going to use two lesser caliber opponents here to paint this picture because I think it makes sense. Old Dominion, first game of the year, right? We have Aaron Murray on the show on our Thanksgiving episode. He called that game. He sat down with Shane Beamer before the game, obviously during the coaches' meetings, and Beamer was straight up with him, man. He's like, hey, listen, we got a young quarterback breaking in a lot on offense. It's not going to look good. And it didn't look good. I mean, LaNorris Sellers looked rough, man, throwing for 43% when it comes to his completion percentage. Fast forward the tape. They play another lower-level opponent, most recently Wofford. LaNorris Sellers goes for 300-plus yards, 85% of his passes completed. And that's just like a tip of the iceberg of how he's progressed. You can also point to the Missouri game. He went berserk. I spoke about the A&M game. He has continued to progress every single week and get better to a level where, like, I think he is now playing his best football. You don't speak about LaNorris Sellers now being a first-year starting quarterback. He has surpassed whatever that label is. He's now on to the next year by how he's progressed and how he's playing. I think there's a lot on his shoulders in this game because as much as I just spoke to what the Clemson offense is going to have to do, is this Clemson defense the Power Rangers of old where Brent Venables is calling the defense? You got that crazy defensive line. No. Are they still really good? You better believe it. They are top 30 in America when it comes to rush yards allowed per game. Translation, if you want to have success against Clemson, you're going to have to, what I would say, and we talk about this a lot on the show, I think you got to find a way to burn their hand on the hot stove early. Clemson adds extra to the box. They know LaNorris Sellers can run the football. They know Rocket Sanders is an absolute force of nature. They stack the box, so what do? Put him over the top to a Nicholas Harbor, to a Jacobs, to a whoever you want to fill in the blank there, to a Simon, whoever you want to talk about there. But if you can do that, that discombobulates the game plan, changes the way they have to play you. You cannot then stack the box because you have just told them, as LaNorris Sellers at quarterback, I'm going to hurt you throwing the football if you don't respect that. So if they can do that early, I think that's the path for South Carolina. I think that'll be the approach for South Carolina, quite frankly, that they'll try and attack. So here's what concerns me for Clemson in this spot. We've said this a couple times, but like Clemson has not had to step under the heavy bar a whole lot this season. And that's not dunking on Clemson so much as it is dunking on the ACC. But, like, since Georgia, who is the opponent from a personnel perspective that matches up with Clemson? Not saying that teams haven't beaten Clemson. We saw Louisville very, very visibly be the better team on that Saturday. But from a roster perspective, is Louisville as talented as Clemson? I don't know. I'll say this. I think South Carolina is a lot more talented than Louisville. And so what concerns me now is if I'm Clemson, it is very difficult to create some sense of urgency here or create that same level of intensity that you need to have to beat a team like South Carolina, the level of physicality you have to beat a team like South Carolina. I also don't love their play style when it comes to how they match up with South Carolina. To beat South Carolina, I think you got to apply pressure on the perimeter. You got to have a level of explosivity on offense, which Clemson's had at points this year, but I don't know that you have it with the front seven of South Carolina bringing you down with 1.5 Mississippis. So, not being able to put them in chase mode concerns me. Again, I think the convincing potential for South Carolina with the College Football Playoff Committee here also is a lot to play for. I think South Carolina wins this game. Obviously, I think South Carolina covers with them being 2.5-point dogs on the road. And again, I think South Carolina sends a message after this game is over, like, hey, playoff committee, do what you want to do, but you're going to have to deal with this result as you sort through who you want to have as those best 12 teams. Again, not most deserving, not resume, best 12 teams. I think South Carolina makes a statement this weekend, and I think that they make that discussion very difficult on the committee when it comes to Selection Sunday. I get the resumes don't work out in South Carolina's favor. I get they don't have the head-to-head over Ole Miss. I get they don't have the head-to-head over Bama. We're using common sense here. Looking at 12 best teams, South Carolina, I think after this weekend, we will all be in alignment, should be one of the 12 best teams. Now, how do they weigh that in November? Another conversation for another time. We will have that conversation for you tomorrow on our Wednesday edition of this football